You're listening to the Heart Lessons podcast with me, Sarah Rieke. Real women, real stories, real faith. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Heart Lessons podcast. You're listening to episode number 12. And in today's episode, you'll hear from my friend Sarah Ann Rogers. Sarah is a wife, mother, blogger, and now podcaster. Her podcast, which is called Tell Her Story, launched last Thursday, so definitely head over to iTunes and check it out. In this episode of Heart Lessons, Sarah is going to share about her experience with postpartum depression and anxiety. She talks about the fact that what really surprised her, what surprised her the most about this struggle is that she was even walking in darkness at all. She shares how the Lord brought her out of that darkness through meditating on scripture, taking every thought captive, purposefully pulling back and giving herself time and space to heal, and taking the medications that were recommended and prescribed by her midwives. Sarah can speak from a place of experience and a place of feeling victory over this struggle. And finally, she shares what her heart lessons are, and she says she has a few. And so a couple of her heart lessons are that God's processes are not like ours, but He is still good through everything and will always draw us back to Himself. And also that the truth of God's word trumps our emotions and anything that we might feel. So I hope you'll be encouraged, and here is my conversation with Sarah. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for talking with me tonight.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear from you. So will you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, my name is Sarah Ann Rogers.
Do you like to be called Sarah Ann?
No, I mean, I don't dislike to be called Sarah.
Okay.
But everyone calls me Sarah.
Okay.
So, but that's who I am online. I actually just changed some of my branding to Sarah Ann Online for various reasons. But anyway, I'm Sarah Ann Rogers, and I am a mom to two little kids, two little boys, a wife to a really, really, really awesome man. He's super sweet, and he's putting my kids down as we speak, so that's amazing. And I am a writer. I'm working on calling myself a writer.
Me too, actually.
Yeah, I'm a writer. I am a writer. Because I do write, even if
exactly.
It's just for me. And I am a soon-to-be podcaster in like 2 days.
Yeah, so is Thursday your debut? That's when you're...
Thursday is my debut.
That's awesome.
It's our launch, so I'm really excited. And so that's what I live in Charleston, South Carolina, which I'm convinced is the prettiest city in the U.S. I love it. I love it here. I think it's beautiful and charming, even though it's really hot.
Yeah, we were just talking about the humidity.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So your podcast, tell me a little bit about it and like what your vision is. Like, what are your goals and what it's called so we can find it on Thursday?
We're calling it, I keep saying we. Billy is being really helpful, my husband, but it's just me. I'm calling it Tell Her Story.
Okay.
And I'm interviewing women, probably similar to this format. I'm interviewing women that I find fascinating, or whose stories I really have loved watching, or women who I, think are wonderful and fascinating and doing great things, whose story I want to know more about. So I'm doing that because I, as a writer and a words lover, I think story is really, really huge and connects us, and makes us feel free and empowered when we hear other people telling their stories in a free way. So that's the goal, that women who walk away after listening or drive or sit or whatever they're doing will feel connected and empowered and freed. So yeah, that's the goal. So Tell Her Story. Yeah. It's so creative.
I think it's cute. When I saw your little thing on Instagram, I'm like, oh, that's really cute.
Well, thank
it's a pretty
you.
Little graphic and everything.
I was trying to think of a cute name, but this just seemed practical, so that's what I went with.
I like it. It works.
Thanks. Thank you.
I'm excited. I feel the same way about stories, that, I know, they're just powerful. Somehow, I don't know, we just learn a lot from others' examples, and it's like you can see God working.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think, too, on the other side, also having women tell their stories that's empowering too, to tell,
Right.
like, to tell your story and to own wherever you are, whatever, you know, God's written for you is freeing as well. So there's the hope for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I know you also have an ebook that you wrote, Oh, Take Heart.
I do. I was just revisiting it, knowing we were going to talk about this stuff.
Oh, well, I was reading it today, actually.
Oh, good.
So
I haven't looked at it in a little while, so.
I love the cover art. I mean, I know that's like not a huge part of it. Like, that's not like the depth of the book, but I'm like, oh, it's such a pretty cover.
Oh, well, thank you. It's funny. It was funny to make a cover for an ebook because it's an ebook.
Right, because you don't really see
nobody
it.
will hold it. Yeah.
Right.
But it should, thank you. Thank you.
So, and I know the title is Oh, Take Heart, Encouragement in the Dark Seasons. Is that right?
Yes.
And it was kind of born out of your experience with postpartum depression / anxiety, however you want to call it.
Right.
So would you talk a little bit about that? And not necessarily the book, but also like, your experience.
Definitely. I had my first son, and I probably had baby blues just like everyone else. I remember crying one night, like walking upstairs, so tired. My dad was here. Actually, it's kind of a funny story. My dad was here bringing wipes or something, and he meant to text my mom because I was like audibly crying because I was so tired. And he meant to text my mom, but he texted me like, "Call Sarah. She seems upset." I was like, "You texted me." But no, so I think it was a pretty normal recovery. And then when I was 10 months pregnant, when he was 10 months old, I got pregnant with our second, which was a joy and a huge surprise.
Yeah.
Some people do that on purpose, and we did not. So anyway, so I had him, and actually pretty quickly after, I think what really started it all, which when I go back now, I can look at it and see that it really truly was a physical thing at first, and it was a blessing to be able to pinpoint. But a couple of days after we came home, I had what I know now is like a very physical panic attack.
Okay.
But nothing set it off. Like I wasn't panicking about anything. It was what they think it was is like a real drop in hormones. And just my blood pressure skyrocketed, and I just felt crazy. We went to the hospital. I had no idea. And they kept asking me then, do you think this is anxiety? And I was like, no.
Yeah.
I've never dealt with anxiety that I know of. And so, they kept monitoring my blood pressure and kept me for a night and sent me home. So, the first probably 6 weeks, I was not doing well. I had no idea what was going on, but I just was very stressed about my blood pressure and just little things, thinking like, I don't think I can do this. And then it quickly, I think, just kept going downhill for me. Just, more crying than I'm used to, kind of feeling detached, wanting to sleep a lot. Anyway, so those are like the really, broad basic details. And so at 6 weeks, we have wonderful, wonderful midwives, and I called them. So it was definitely God. There's a girl who I just am like slight acquaintances with. I know her through people, and I remembered her writing something on her blog about postpartum depression, and I just thought, I'm gonna go look that up. And I read it, and I just knew. I thought, this is 6 weeks after I had him. And so I called my midwives. I had an appointment the next day anyway, and they were like, "You're doing okay. Go get some coffee, put the baby down.
Yeah.
You can do this, and we'll see you in the morning." And they were amazing. And so that morning they diagnosed me, I guess, with, they just said this is just classic postpartum depression. And then the more we read up on it, I think what I had more, so there's all sorts of types if you're interested or medically interested, or if you're in the middle of it. There's postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum OCD, and then there are things, that are worse. But I think I really had postpartum anxiety induced by hormones. And then sometimes it inched into the depression because this was all so crazy for me. So the midwives were great, and they gave me a little bit of medication, which was awesome. And they also gave me some hormone replacement cream, which I think is what helps a lot. And then, of course, a lot of downtime and backing off. So that's kind of the story of, what happened. Yeah. That's the background. But I didn't write the ebook. I'm trying to remember when I released it until probably a good year after that.
Okay.
Because it took me a long time to recover from all of that. So
to process everything.
For sure.
Yeah.
And a long time to get back to normal.
There was a quote that you wrote, actually I think it was just in your introduction, and maybe throughout the book. I didn't finish reading it, but you said that you were struggling with the fact that you were walking in darkness at all. And I thought that was so interesting.
For sure. I look back and I think that it was almost harder for me. And I mean, God knew, and I can see some really good things because He's gracious to work through it. But I think feeling like I definitely felt feelings were not like something I could depend on in that season, which I'm sure that you understand with things that you've walked through, where I kind of felt like I remember a friend saying, and I did write this in the ebook, but God's there, right? And I was like, no. I mean, I can say it and I'm working to believe it, but how I felt it, my whole relationship with Him, or how I've felt like just a sense of peace and security underlying, even though things might go crazy. Like I didn't feel that. Mm-hmm. And so that was very difficult, and that felt very, very dark. Like I just did not feel hope. I hoped that there was hope. Right. And I had some great people in my life who were able to say with experience, I promise this will, you will see glimmers of this again. You are not crazy. Mm-hmm. But just, it was very difficult for me to walk in that's kind of how I refer to that as just a real season of darkness, because, even as a Christian, I think I did not expect that was okay, mm-hmm. or that was something that God would let happen to me. So, in my spirit, I thought, external circumstances may happen, but I'll always have this great feeling,
of peace or joy,
and joy, and an underlying, I know what's going on, and God's got it, and that really did leave me for a little bit. Some of it, I think, is really truly because my brain was a little broken for a little while, mm-hmm. And I really just needed to let it heal because of all those hormones, and some of it was just, where I was at. And so that was really difficult for me to walk through it at all. It was like a crisis of identity, probably a little bit of a crisis of faith. I don't ever remember thinking God isn't real or anything. I just felt like, why don't I feel Him? Mm-hmm. So,
Did you feel like you could talk about it with people, or did you kind of feel like there was a stigma, about the word depression, in Christian circles?
That is a loaded question. I did feel like I could talk about it some. I felt free in some senses. My mom is a pastor's wife, and my grandmother is a pastor's wife. Okay. And both of my grandmothers were actually really sweet and wonderful through this whole season, but one of my grandmothers lives here, and she came over once a week and talked about, she lost a daughter when her daughter was 8, and she's had, just seasons of darkness herself, and so she really freed me to kind of get through saying some of those things. Uh-huh. But as a whole, to my community at large, partially, I think I didn't say as much because of the stigma, for sure. I did have a couple of experiences, with friends where everyone was so gentle and sweet, but, I felt like maybe they were being more oh, well, can you handle this? You know, that felt a little weird.
Like patronizing a little bit, maybe?
A little bit, even if not meaning to at all. Nobody ever meant to, like, but there was a little while where I didn't drive. That was, like, that anxious while I was waiting on things to get, like, the cream to work and the medicine to kick in.
Yeah.
Like, I was, like, worried about driving. It was definitely, like, a real anxiety that it was, like, a fear of fear. It was all in my head. But anyway, people were like, oh, are you driving yet? You know, like, right. Yes, I'm fine. I just took a little break. Like, Billy happened to be able to drive me places for just probably like 2 or 3 weeks. But yeah, so I did feel a little weird about that. But the other side of that is I didn't share a whole lot of where I was at because though I do have such a huge, wonderful, loving community and our church is great, for me, it was so overwhelming. I felt like it was something to unpack every time I shared with somebody, and I didn't feel like I had the emotional energy to do that. Yeah. So I had a couple of close friends that I shared with where I was at, and even though they were my close friends, after I shared, I was like, oh, I'm exhausted. You know, just it was exhausting for me to put that into words. I couldn't say that I had postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety for a long time. I would just say postpartum issues. Right. Because calling it that was just really weird. I mean, I had a stigma about it for sure. Yeah. They waited. I go to a birth center, and the midwives tried a couple of things for a couple of weeks before they actually put me on any medication. And the day that I did, they were so sweet and gentle, and they were just like, you just need this to get over the hump. Yeah. We really recommend it. It's good. This is to do with your body. This is something that happens sometimes after birth. And this is going to help your body so that your brain can get back to where it needs to be. That was one of the hardest days for me, is thinking, oh my gosh, I'm this person. Yeah. I'm this person that has to take something. Which now, you know, I think is so silly. But I couldn't see that then, so.
Right. But looking back, you're like, that was necessary. That was helpful.
Oh, my goodness. It was so helpful. We've even talked, you know, if I have another one, I'm like, what are you guys going to do for me?
Can I get these pills? Remember those little blue pills? No.
But actually, the funny thing is, I do go to a place that's I love them because we do like to do things in a more natural way, or a more like whole, like looking at your whole body, but they also believe in medication. And so I think the hormone cream is they gave me a progesterone cream. Okay. It's a bioidentical hormone cream. If anyone's in the middle of it, you can ask your doctor. They had to make it at a compound pharmacy, and I would put it on, and it was crazy. It was within a couple of hours, or even within an hour, I would really feel some of it lift and feel a little bit more like myself. That's and then crazy. I would crash when it was time to reapply it. Wow. Which signaled to me and did help comfort me that, oh, really, I think I have a lack of progesterone in my body. Yeah. Which they said that's usually what happens, is your progesterone rises in pregnancy and then crashes. So anyway, about a year later, when I was thinking maybe I would try and wean off of the medication, I was very scared, and I called them and told them, you know, I think I'm going to wean off. Can you give me some instructions? She said, okay, well, how much are you taking? I told her, and she was like, oh, you can just stop. Aww. Are you sure? Like, I don't want to have it. She was like, no. Like, I don't think it was very much. That's funny. But anyway, now I think if ever I need it again, and you know, I've had some friends go through this, and there is a kind of a funny stigma. I don't know if it's in the Christian world or what, about getting on anything to help your brain. And I think, goodness, it's great. I mean, I think, of course, they can be misused, but now I look back and think I'm super, super thankful that they cared for me in that way. So
that's good. That's great that you found that, for sure. Yeah. So what was your coping strategy otherwise, other than you know, getting actual hormone help, versus or just good thoughts, or what would bring you comfort? How did you mentally get through?
There were a few things, I think, and I did write about this in the ebook if anyone's wondering. I think one of the strategies is I really did pull back. I gave myself space to have limits and like real limits. And so when I felt like I reached my limits, I lived within those. And that was very humbling because I felt like I could do a lot less than I normally could, which, I also I had like 2 kids under 2. So I don't know. I mean, it could be that, it could be the other, but I really felt like, I just backed off of a lot of stuff I was doing, which for me seemed healthy. I think some people need to get involved more, and that's a coping thing. But for me, staying home with my family, we went on lots of drives. Again, Charleston is beautiful, so we would get coffee and go on drives and go on walks. And so allowing myself just time and space to heal was so good. And that was a very good coping thing, and not rushing, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to know exactly what to do and what formula it should be. And everyone who'd ever experienced it or was medical at all was telling me, this is not how this works. Yeah. You're going to have to take it takes this time, and you just are going to have to, submit to that process. And so I think that was one very practical thing that we did is just really worked on saying, like, I'm not going to look ahead too much. We're just going to deal with today and breathe. Another thing I did was be really, really careful what I let in, like any TV shows or books. Like I didn't do anything, or stories. If people were telling stories that I didn't want to hear, I would get up and walk away. Yeah. If I just, again, like I really, really paid attention to my limits. If anything, I felt like I wasn't going to handle well, I let myself be there. I think most of the time we need to be challenging to ourselves, but there are also times when we need to pay attention.
Be gentle.
Be gentle. I definitely, especially in those first 6 weeks, I was pounding scripture, like pounding it into my head, which is great. And obviously there's nothing ever bad about that. But I was doing things like verses like, like call on the Lord and he will answer, which is good. And those things are good and things that we need to apply all the time. But then getting really stressed that when I was like calling on the Lord, I didn't feel him right away. And then feeling like, well, maybe I had failed him. Maybe it was me. I mean, I was desperate. I mean, I was reading Get Out of That Pit. I read that in a day. It was Beth Moore's book. And I was like, I'm not even in a pit that I can get out of. I'm going to claim this over my life. And it wasn't working. So in that way too. And again, my grandmother was really sweet to me. She was really gentle. And again, being a pastor's wife for as long as she has been and walking through real life as she had, I felt like I could trust her, because I became pretty careful in reading scripture. I still did it, but I was gentle to myself, and I read verses just about God's sovereignty. And there's a verse that I put in the ebook about, it's Job, let's see if I can find it, where he says, I go east, but he is not there. I go west, I cannot find him. I do not see him in the north, for he is hidden. I look to the south, but he is concealed. But he knows where I'm going, and when he tests me, I will come out as pure as gold. So those types of verses became ones I held on to more. And then I chose, one of the mechanisms that I chose to do, though I think it helped, I believe it helped, I didn't feel it, is that I chose scriptures to hold on to, like that one, or just really basic, like gospel scriptures about Jesus and what he did for us. And I just would tell God, okay, I'm going to say that this is true and believe that this is true. And even though I don't feel it at all, I don't feel like it's true, like it doesn't seep into my bones, but I'm going to call out truth over my life. So that was something that I chose to do. Again, I think it was good and true and worthy, but I didn't feel it at that time. And then another thing is Billy. I think if it weren't for Billy and my grandmother, I would have definitely needed to see a counselor. But I basically was getting counseling from them. She could be a counselor, and would qualify as one. And so she came over once a week. She would come when Billy left for work and stay until he got home. And then sometimes she would just pop in it was always very timely. If I was having a hard day, she was like, I just was thinking about you, and I felt like maybe I should be with you. So there was that. Sweet. And she would just sit and let me be, and she was very kind, and she just really let me process. And then Billy read some books, like a counselor probably would, specifically on postpartum anxiety and tools that you can use to help battle some of those thoughts. And so we used some actual, like, counseling type tools, like cognitive behavioral therapy, and, replace, which is, just probably stuff you can find in the Bible too, like replacing your thoughts, uprooting thoughts you don't want to have.
Yeah.
So those were like real practical mechanisms. I listened to a lot of music. I went on a lot of walks. I got a lot of sunshine.
A lot of vitamin D.
A lot of vitamin D, I really did. I tried to exercise, really just tried to take care of myself.
Yeah.
And pay attention to the fact that I needed to take care of myself. And if I didn't, that it was going to be even slower. And I wanted to speed it up as much as I could. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No,
those are very practical things.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. When you were, you said it took you like about a year or so to heal. During that time, did you feel like you were just kind of like going through the motions to survive? Like, did you just feel very mechanical?
Yeah, and I think my grandmother, again, I'm going to talk about her a lot because she was just a godsend in that time. But especially in the beginning, because it took a while for things to really kick in, for the help and even just the understanding of what was going on and what kinds of things we could do, thought-wise and then medicine-wise and time-wise. That was really just going through the motions. Like, yeah. We made it. We had a lot of support from our families and my family in particular, because they knew a little bit more, or my mom probably in particular knew what was going on. And so she would just step in sometimes and help me go through the motions. But yeah, we changed diapers, and I looked back. That was one of the things, even after, I think it was when I felt healthy again mentally, I still really dealt with a lot from that time. Mm-hmm. We're just coming up on Asher turning 3, and I would say the last year has been great. But the year after, even, I had to uproot feeling like I was a really bad mom because I needed help. Mm. And then I had to go back and look at that year and say, okay, no, I was a good mom. I went through the motions, but yeah, my kids were fed, and they were healthy. And if they were sick, I took them to the doctor, and they were cuddled, and they were loved. And, they didn't know anything was going on, which is probably great,
Yeah.
So even though I felt like I was being the worst version of myself, that, it was still working. It just wasn't, at the full capacity I wanted to be. But then one of the things I was going to say, my grandmother told me, is that, in walking through a season like this, that it's like at the beginning, it seems really dark. And then she often referenced to after her daughter died, which of course is way, way bigger than what I dealt with. Way bigger. And what you've been through is way bigger than what I dealt with.
but it's still something. Still something you had to work through.
It's still something. Yeah. But yeah. But she said, like there's a dark, it's like walking through darkness. And she said, and then you see like a little glimmer of light some days. She said, and then it seems like it grows, like the light moments grow, and then eventually you're on the other side where it's mostly light. But every once in a while you'll have a moment that's, a reminder of that darkness or anxiety or whatever it is. But then you can know that it's just a moment. And that was really good for me too, because I would kind of panic sometimes when I'd have a reminder of like how I felt before or something, and to go, okay, it's just a moment, but it's mostly light. So I feel like from the beginning of that year to the end, that's kind of how it spanned. So at the end, I felt like I was functioning pretty good. So
that's good. Well, it's so funny that you're talking about light, because I was going to ask you, like, when did you finally start to see, like, when did you have those moments when you thought like the light, was more than the darkness? Like, what did that feel like? When did that come? How did you realize it?
Yeah, I think it was probably a good 6 months after, which is right about halfway through. I actually remember we were on a trip. We were in Virginia, and we were meeting some friends there. And I remember there are just some of our closest friends, and we were talking about it a lot. And I remember I went upstairs after we had just it was late night talks, so we didn't get to see them much, and I cried in the room, but it was like a good cry. I told Billy I felt tired by talking about it and exhausted and raw, but I felt like, okay, like I don't feel consumed, and I feel like I can talk about it almost in the past tense. Like it was mostly like I'm functioning now, and that was probably 6 months in, so I still had like moments or days where it would kind of overcome me, or I would feel really stressed or anxious, or not quite know how to walk forward. But I think so I think, just I would look around sometimes and think like, okay, I am doing better, or I can watch that movie, normal movies that I all of a sudden couldn't watch, or, I can talk about these things and I'm functioning okay. And, or sometimes I think part of it too, feeling like I was in the light when I could, when I thought, because one of the things that the anxiety, which I think is classical anxiety, is like a thought would come and then it would spiral out of control, to where then all of a sudden I was scared as if as if it was really, really, really happening.
Right.
Like the same amount of fear, which is, it's unrealistic and unhealthy. And so when I could have, maybe a fear or a thought come and then go, I don't want to think this. And I don't, even though it's making me feel scared, I'm going to remove it. And then when it really would remove itself some, that's when I felt like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're doing okay. All right.
You had the power. Like you were like in control of your mind again.
Yes.
Or getting there.
And where before, we could have tried all the things in the beginning, and it was just really almost like a wave I had to ride out.
Yeah.
Which is sad. I've talked to women now who are in that, and I kind of feel like just do your best, cope. Be healthy, and do your best to take care of yourself and get to a doctor and get to a counselor and all those things, but also just trust that those times will come, and don't get stressed if they don't right now. Because it takes time.
So would you say, do you feel like you've overcome it? Do you feel like you still have like days from that, like maybe left over? I
definitely feel like I've overcome it. I definitely feel like I'm in it. I feel like my brain is healthy because I know what it feels like to be unhealthy.
Yeah.
But I do think that there are things that I think things I guess I deal with, or that I still process from that time. And some of it too, I think, is just, it's good stuff that I have to process. It's not good. It doesn't feel good. But still going back and sometimes remembering, that I wasn't fully in control of everything. And I think God used that to remind me, that I'm not in control, and that I'm pretty stripped down, in a good way, and really need Him. And also that being a Christian doesn't look like, me serving Him and Him giving me good things, and Him, making me happy and making me feel really, really lovely all the time. So sometimes I still, will feel sad or tired from that time. And I definitely feel like sometimes I remember with great clarity the anxiety, but I don't feel overcome. Definitely not physically like I did. And then mentally, if it ever comes, I feel like I really, really do have the tools. But I feel a little bit like it changed me a little bit, in a lot of ways good, and in some ways I still think, gosh, I don't say this hardly ever anymore, but right after, probably a year after, I was like, oh, I would give all this back. I would never walk through this. Because that was it didn't feel like there was anything good about that. I still look back and I don't think there was anything good about it. I think that God is really gracious And I'm grateful because I think it made me, or reminded me even more of how human I am, and it's connected me to other women, and certainly drawn me closer to God. And so that's something to be thankful for. But anyway, yeah. So it's a process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a lot of things in life.
Just like a lot of things. Yeah.
What would your advice be to a mom facing postpartum depression or anxiety? What would you tell her? What would your words of encouragement be to her?
Oh, goodness. I would say so many things.
Well, you can start. Top 10. I don't know.
I mean, of course, first I would say, and I have said to women who tell me, you know, that they're feeling these things, that if they haven't talked to their doctor or especially, I mean, your doctor, you should talk to your doctor.
Yeah.
They don't always want to medicate you, but even if they do, when they tell you that you should do it, it's because they've seen this and they know it helps. And so, and I think too, I would tell them just to be kind to themselves. I think talking to people who had walked through hard things, or seasons like that, even if it wasn't exactly the same as mine, most everybody could say, you just need to give yourself time. This too shall pass. I remember my grandparents saying that to me a lot. This too shall pass. Mm-hmm. This will pass. And just even having somebody else who's walked something like that tell me, I know it's hard and it will pass, but I recognize that it's there. But it will get better. But yeah, I think a lot of women also find great encouragement from community like them. I actually had a kind of an interesting experience. I was recommended by the midwife to a community locally about, postpartum depression of the Low Country or something. Well, the Low Country is what we call our area in South Carolina. And I emailed one of them and introduced myself, and the email back. So this is my in the words I would not say. She emailed me back and she was like, yes, now I know I struggle with mental illness for the rest of my life. And that is a very real thing. Yeah. But postpartum depression, I'm sure it can get categorized under mental illness or whatever. But the way it sounded was like she had very much resigned herself. To just like, this is what it is. And I think that, again, there are all sorts of things that we walk through, and medication is really great. Support groups are really great. But I was really grateful for like Christian people in my life, people who knew the Lord, who didn't define me by that. And so I would say to surround yourself with people like that, to seek out, other people who are, right. even if it is a mental illness, or it triggers the mental illness that you battle, or I hate calling it a mental illness. I have friends who, had postpartum anxiety and, for years then feel like it's triggered some anxiety, and they're super effective and super wonderful. And that is not all there is to them. It's just a little thing. And so I really think to surround yourself with people who are life-giving and who believe in you is just, who are for you and still see you as a person. That was the thing that I felt sometimes. And I think anybody walking through anything can feel that way. Like somebody might see you as what you're going through,
right? Yeah.
And not talk to you about anything else, or, walk on eggshells. That's kind of tough. I'm sure that you've experienced your share. So I think surrounding yourself, for me too, again, I don't know if everybody is like this, but I needed somebody to free me, to close my circle, and to say no to things, and to really heal and hibernate, I guess. I kind of hibernated. I read lots of cheesy Christian romance novels. I drank lots of mochas. Yeah. I did lots of just Target walks. And, I felt so unproductive. But looking back, it was very productive. I was healing. And again, and my kids were being taken care of. Like, that was the goal, that my kids were staying alive and I was getting better. And that, like, if I disappointed anybody else, it just didn't matter that much at that time. So giving yourself freedom just to heal and take your time, whether it's a year. What do they say, that your body can take 18 months to heal from a pregnancy in general?
Oh, wow. I guess I'd never heard that, but.
Yeah, I think I definitely have heard a year, but I've heard from a few sources 18 months.
Wow.
And I think if your body takes 18 months, then your hormones might be taking 18 months.
Right.
And so don't expect things to move quickly. If they do and you just have 6 weeks of stuff, great. And if you have 18 months where you hunker down and you just take care of your family and yourself, great.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. That's good enough. That's good work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
if anybody needs permission to do that, here, you're hearing it right here.
Yeah.
We give you permission.
Just let it go.
Yeah.
If you don't want to do all the play dates, you don't have to. If you want to do all the play dates and that's all you want to do all the play dates.
Right.
Yeah, do what you need to do to stay healthy or get healthy.
So this is Heart Lessons. So what would you say your heart lesson has been, either that carried you through or that you still think about, that the Lord keeps, speaking to your heart?
Yeah, from that season
that
I got out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, again, I could say so many things. I think the main thing is that his processes are not like mine, but that he is good through everything. And that he will draw us back to himself. And I think that like I said, I didn't feel it, but I knew, and I think it must have been the Spirit, and the one thing that I knew is that the truth, like the Word, it trumped my emotion and anything I might feel. And I think that was something that he built into my life in that season, that no matter what I feel, that God's Word is true and I'm going to claim it over my life. And it's powerful. And I look back and it definitely was powerful, even though I didn't feel it. That was carrying me and my kids and keeping me in a good spot, I think. Keeping me from maybe greater damage by claiming truth. And then when I walked out, I felt tired and I felt exhausted, but I still felt like my foundation was firm. And that's because it is. And if my foundation is on the Lord, it is firm.
Right.
And he is the price. And his truth is the price. And so I think remembering, and because that's really in all seasons of life, I think we have feelings and we have reactions, but remembering that like God's truth trumps all of that. And so even though I might be feeling like things are spinning out of control, or I might be feeling like I'm a failure, or I might be feeling like, I have no idea what's going to happen next, being able to go back to this is what the Word says and this is what God says, and I can stand on it no matter what I feel, was really huge for me. So that was my heart lesson. One of many, I'm sure.
No, that's definitely a great one. Like me and my kids were just singing last night. We had a storm last night. We were singing that song, like, the wise man built his house.
Yes, my kids have been singing it all the time. It's so cute.
Yeah, so I don't know. It just makes me think of that. Like, if you build your, foundation on Christ, on the solid rock, then you're okay. Even when the storms come,
you are, and that it is a firm foundation. Even if you don't feel it, it grounds you, and it's good. It's so good.
So, Sarah, where can we find more about you and about your story? Like, where on the internet can we find out more about you?
Well, you can go to my website. You can find me either at sarahannrogers.com or sarahannonline.com. And I am on Instagram at sarahannonline, and it's with an H. Sarah and Ann. I know I have a very basic name, but Sarah has an H and Ann does not have an E. So, and Rogers does not have a D. So you still have to explain, even if it's simple. So Sarah Ann Online on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter, but I'm never there.
I have Twitter too, and I'm like, I don't know how to use it right. I don't think.
I know, it's just another space to go online too, and I don't have the skills.
Yeah, so, right. I'm trying. I'm like, I should Google like how to maximize your Twitter account.
I just got a Snapchat.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know what I'm doing at all. But if you want to Snapchat. I think it's Sarah Ann Rogers, but I don't know. Do it fast because I don't know how long I'm going to be on there. But it's been fun. I'm learning. I feel real, uncool when I get on. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. But we're trying.
I haven't even tried, so that's better. That's better than what I've done.
Well, I just spent the weekend. It worked out because it was here in Charleston. But have you picked up, which you should, the Wild and Free book?
Oh my gosh. Everyone's talking about it. I want to read it. I hear that it's a must-read.
It is a must-read,
yes.
And I was on the launch team.
Oh, that's
we had
awesome.
a launch team party, and Jess Connolly lives here in Charleston, and so the party was here because Charleston's the best. And so
I feel
a bunch of women traveled
now.
here, and they were all Snapchatting the weekend, and I thought, I got to get in on this. I want to know. So I downloaded it, and I was watching all their Snapchats, and I was like, they're so fun. They're so cool. I could maybe do this. And so we'll see.
Oh, my word.
Yeah, but they're very cool. And the book is amazing.
Is it? I've heard such great things.
It's so good. It's I think for every woman. It's also really, really great. Jess Connolly and Haley Morgan wrote it together. And they wrote different chapters.
Oh, okay. I was actually wondering how that dynamic worked in the book.
I mean, maybe every woman will connect with both of them on an equal level, but I felt like I connected with one author more, but the other one, I mean, they both brought such truth that, I mean, you're going to get something out of every chapter, but I could think of friends where I thought, I think she might personally connect with this girl's story, but needs the truth of both. So it's a really, really special book. Everyone should buy it.
Well, maybe I will.
It's not even what we're talking about.
Right now. No.
Go get it.
I know.
So good.
I've been seeing it everywhere. I definitely need to do that.
You definitely do.
So, all right, Sarah. Well, I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a storm rolling in. I don't know if it's picking up on the recording, but, so I don't want this to end abruptly with my power going out or something. So, but this has been so great. Thank you so much for chatting with me and,
having me.
I'm excited for the launch of your podcast, which I guess this episode is going to air on Monday, so your podcast will already be out.
Oh, fun.
So, I can put a link, for everybody to go listen to your first. Are you going to put a couple out? I'm going to put one out, and then I have a little tiny, under
intro. 10 minutes intro podcast.
Okay, fun.
So that should be it, too.
Well, I'm excited for everyone to listen to it and for everyone to hear your story here. And thank you for sharing your heart.
Thank you so much for asking. It's such an honor.
I really enjoyed my conversation with Sarah, and I truly felt like I was talking to a kindred spirit. And I really identified with some parts of her story, especially the parts about speaking God's truth over your life, even when you don't feel like it's true. And don't forget, if you're struggling with postpartum issues, Sarah and I give you permission to pull back and rest. And you heard it here, so be encouraged and be freed to give yourself space and time that you need to heal and rest. And don't forget to head over to iTunes and check out Sarah's new podcast, Tell Her Story, that is now live. And if you enjoyed the topic of today's Heart Lessons podcast, make sure you check out episode number 2, where my friend Amy shares about her experience with fear and anxiety and panic attacks. And thank you all for listening. I love knowing that this podcast is reaching people. And if this podcast is reaching you, why don't you go ahead and let me know about it? That would be awesome. You can leave a rating and a review on iTunes. You could email me, sarahjrieke@gmail.com. You can find me on Instagram. And don't forget to, follow. Turn on the notifications. You can find me on Instagram, Sarah_Rieke, and comment under the podcast guest photos that I post every time a new podcast is up. I definitely love hearing from my listeners, and it's really encouraging for me to just kind of keep going in what I'm doing. So thank you again. I hope you were encouraged today, and as always, I hope you were able to come away with your own heart lesson that can help you draw closer to the Lord.